Hi, this is Bryan Schaefer. If you're interested in hiring me to deliver some dynamic workshops at your next conference or internal corporate training, please let me know. Contact us or visit our website for more information. Performance management, setting performance expectations. Happy to be here. Thanks to 𝐃𝐈𝐒𝐂𝐋𝐀 for inviting me. Really, we're talking about performance management overall, so we're going to quickly sort of look at it from the broad perspective, then bringing it right down to the specific skills that are required to have those conversations with those employees that aren't living up to expectations. But we need to start with, well, how do we set those expectations, and what does that look like? Okay, so the whole process, and then, like I said, we narrow it down to those specific skills. And by the time we're done here, you will have a plan and a set of steps in order to actually have that conversation when you get back to the workplace, if you have a situation where you need to have one. Common problem in organizations, and I'm not saying that there's nothing but bad employees out there, but at the end of the day, what's the impact of not having those conversations? Because what does it do for you, credibility-wise as a leader, if you're letting this stuff slide? What are the other people, the high performers, what do they think if they see this happening and you're not doing anything about it? What does that do to the team, to the morale, to your credibility as a leader? So typically what happens in organizations where this is going on, you'll lose the good people because they're frustrated, because they don't want to work in an organization of mediocrity where people can get away with things and nothing's done about it. I want to go to an organization where I can thrive and be successful and work with others that are of the same mindset. There's goal setting and performance expectations, so everybody understands what is expected of them, by individual, by role. Okay, and those are laid out and agreed upon by everybody in the organization. That's where we need to start, because what are you managing to? What are you course correcting from if people don't know what good looks like? So we need to do a good job of this. Then it's very easy to step in and say, hey, by the way, remember when we had that discussion about what time we start every day, or our dress code, or the way we interact with our customers, internal and external? I noticed something a little different than what we had agreed upon, and I'd like to make sure that that doesn't happen again. It's easy to have that conversation when everybody's crystal clear on what that expectation is to begin with. Then the ongoing, okay, you've been given the set of criteria in which to work from, now go and do it. And then it becomes on-the-job coaching and feedback. And then the last piece, and I'm sure we're all doing this, is performance review. This is one of the big messages I hope you take from this. We don't course correct employees once a year at performance review time. You see something going wrong, oh, performance review is coming up in 2 months. I'll just wait and we'll talk about it then. No, you deal with it immediately. If you've dealt with it immediately when it's come up, it's no longer an issue at the end of the year. And at the end of the year, it should really be a fun thing, almost. It should really almost be a celebration. Congratulations, you had a fantastic year. Yeah, there were some issues we had to deal with along the way. We had some great, open, honest conversations about those. I appreciate the fact that you were able to course correct, and you're a valuable employee. What does next year look like? Let's build some plans around what that looks like. That's what the conversation around annual performance appraisal should be. Yes, we got to document things in your system, and we got to check where your comp's going to be or whatever. That's part of the process. But the annual performance review, there really shouldn't be any surprises. You should know what to expect, because you received feedback along the way, so you know if you're on track or not. And it really just becomes a formality. If it's done properly along the way, this shouldn't feel like a root canal, because it's all been dealt with. So let's just talk about preparing the employee. So what is the process? Supervisors, managers must prepare the employee through feedback, training, and support. It's your job to make them successful. So you need to explain to them what our standards are, what we expect, what success looks like. Okay? And I'm there to help you if you need it. Because if you haven't laid that out, how do they know where to correct and what to correct? And how do you know how to give them specific feedback if this hasn't been done first? In skills, give them the training and support they need. Okay? And then spell out the accountability system. That just means this is how you're evaluated and how you're measured and what I expect of you, and when and how we're going to provide feedback on those pieces. Okay? That's the accountability piece. So you need to make sure things are monitored, as I mentioned. Activate the accountability system, and rewards are appropriate, and they're fair across the board. And they fall into sort of three areas: compliance with process and policies, interpersonal conduct and behavior, and minimum performance expectations. Again, all employees are crystal clear on what these are. Now it's easy to manage to them. Okay? And if you have organizations or teams or groups where things are sort of starting to slip, you can see quality slip, you can see engagement slip, and you see people just rolling in whenever they feel like it, quality suffer, you're getting pressure from your manager, customer complaints are going up. Clearly there's some issues going on. In your workbook there's a case study from Robin, the frustrated supervisor. We're not going to have time to go through it, but I ask you to read that. And it's an example of Robin coming into the team and just kind of observing the work for a few weeks and realizing that there's a real lack of urgency and deciding she needs to kind of reset things and remind everybody why they're here and what we expect. So she develops a set of non-negotiables, and she lays those all out very clearly for her employees, and they all are on board with it, and they all agree to it, and quality begins to go up. And that one individual that decided that they no longer want to be part of the organization moves on, and everybody is extremely excited and happy that that happened, and they pat Robin on the back for taking the initiative to actually do something about that individual. So we're going to take a minute for you guys to actually create your own. I got some really good ones yesterday from folks. So this is just very generic. Follow the one-piece flow system. All that means is if there's a process or a policy or a procedure or a way in which we do things, make sure you're doing it that way. Oh, and by the way, here is what it looks like. So you've trained them on it, so they know exactly what that's supposed to look like. So what you'll see here is there's a variety of non-negotiables, right? There's some safety stuff, there's some process and policy stuff, there's some how we treat each other stuff here, right? So, and you may have some ideas now when we start thinking about this, but I would like you guys to just take a minute and list some non-negotiables. List some things in your mind that if you see it going on, you need to stop it immediately. You need to have a conversation and say, this is not acceptable. So think of what those might be and just take a few minutes. We're not going to have a ton of time to go through it in detail, but I'd like to get a couple examples. I had a team at an organization I worked for, about 12 people, 2 team leads on 2 different groups, and I had to at one point roll out non-negotiables, things like that. Our work hours, when we expect people to show up. You know, the acceptable use policy around the internet, Facebook, and those kinds of things. Break times, yeah, so I had to roll it out so everybody was crystal clear on what we expect. And like I said, 99% of the people understood it, believed it, and fell in line, and it was all good. Okay? But now it's easy to manage that, right? Because we were all there when we talked about it, and if I'm still not seeing it, then we need to have a conversation. And it's easy now to have that conversation because we're very specific. You've given them the standards, they understand it and agree to it. You've given them the training and support that they need if they're not up to where you need them to be skill-wise. And now they're expected to go out and do their jobs. This particular skill works only under 2 conditions. First of all, you have to actually be their direct supervisor. You can give feedback to coworkers, you can give feedback to your boss, but that's a different conversation. You're not going to use harnessing skills on your boss, okay? But you can certainly give feedback to coworkers and so on. But this is really, this is about a commitment to improve immediately, or there are consequences. I mean, that's ultimately the conversation. Just as a reminder, we had a discussion a few weeks ago when we rolled out our non-negotiables that our start time is 8 a.m. and that our breaks are 20 minutes, whatever they are. And I've noticed over the last few weeks that you've been taking 35-minute breaks and showing up at 8:45. Yeah, so that's the conversation you have. So you listed there. You're not telling, they're telling you. This is your problem, not mine. So don't get the monkey on your back after you've had the conversation. Okay, this is some behavior that I've observed that we're not going to allow to happen, and you are aware of that, and what are you going to do to fix it? And this is the other piece that's really key. Be willing to follow through on whatever it is. So if it's, thank you for making a commitment, I'm going to keep an eye on things for the next 2 weeks, and we'll chat again then. Or if this continues, this is the next step. And then when it comes to that, you actually do it. So you've thought about it. You've written them down. You've shared the non-negotiables with your team, and you also have a list of things that you will apply harnessing skills to if you see. So why do you need to do this? When it comes up? We already talked about it, but I want to hear it again. Why do you need to do it? Who said that? Yay, thank you. Yeah, it's your job. And the organization expects you to do that. That's what you're paid for. Fortunately, that comes with the title of manager, supervisor, leading others. You need to make sure everybody's delivering on the promise. So now we're getting right down to the real nitty-gritty of providing feedback. So one of the things, again, you need to make sure is you need to get support, okay, from your boss, and they agree and buy in that you're going to implement this. So that was one of the things that Robin did in the story. Was the first thing she did was go to her boss and say, I've noticed the team's not quite where I need them to be. My plan is to actually roll out some non-negotiables. Here's what they are, first of all. So you've agreed that these non-negotiables are something that we can do here at the organization. And then for her boss to say, I got your back. Go ahead and do this. Whenever I had to have a conversation, even if it was an off-the-record fatherly chat conversation with an employee, I would always tell my boss and said, just so you know, I'm going to have a conversation with John about his appearance again, or the first time, or whatever, just to give him a heads up so he knows. So that if it does go south, you know, he's been involved in the sort of the process the whole way through. Told them exactly what it is you need to correct. If, unfortunately, folks don't want that, and they've made the decision that they're not going to comply, or other issues come up, then you may have to go down the road of progressive discipline, whatever that is. Again, know what this is in your organization. And you've chatted with them up here so they know. I'm going to check back in 2 weeks. Hopefully things go well. But just so you know, if I'm not seeing improvement, unfortunately the next step is going to be a written warning or a verbal warning or whatever it is. The employee needs to know what that is. So then, when they have the next conversation, no surprises. And plan the conversation. Think about it. And then at the bottom it says what could go wrong. You know, what are some things that you need to think about when you have the conversation. But again, the performance review, the annual or quarterly performance review shouldn't be the only time you discuss people's performance. So this is what the performance management, the performance appraisal conversation should look like. We review the year, we look at your goals and what we set for targets and so on throughout the year. Maybe those changed a bit and we adjusted as we went. There was a couple issues I noticed with, you know, the way you delivered on project timelines and a couple, days where you called in sick or whatever, whatever it is. You review those and you say, I appreciate you committing to, not making sure those don't happen again. And then you discuss the next year. This is what we have planned for this year. What are your goals? Where do you want to be in the organization? I'm here to help. What can I do to make you more successful? So if they choose not to, based on everything you've done correctly, then that's their decision. And at some point, they'll make that decision, and off you go. And you don't want those kind of people in your organization anyway, so that's fine. But it's a decision they've made. You've done everything you can. We never like having to let an employee go, and we always feel bad about it, which I understand. I've done it myself in my career, and it's definitely not a nice day. However, I don't feel bad if I gave them every opportunity to be successful. We had conversations. They knew what was expected. I dealt with things immediately. At the end of the day, it's their decision, so I can't feel bad about it. And that's fine. And guess what? When they walk out the door, the rest of the team will give you a round of applause. People don't leave organizations, they leave their boss, right? So if you're not doing this well, you will lose people, good people, right? So again, why do we want to do this? Because it's your job and because the organization expects it. Okay? We want high performers. In order to build a high-performing team, you need to address issues as they arise.